Welcome, fabricators. Okay, here we go. The premise for today, the top 10 videos that you picked this past year, plus the 10 things that I want to see in Microsoft Fabric. And that's what we're covering today on Tales from the Field.
Today's gonna be a good day. Wake up. Today's gonna be a good day. Wake up. Today's gonna be a good day. Wake up. Today's gonna be a good day.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to Tales from the Field and happy 2025. All right, we've got a big brand new year in front of us, but I'm going to start this off by looking back at the top 10 videos that you picked, but also looking at the top 10 things I want to see in Fabric. And good news, 99% of my list we're actually going to get in the first quarter of 2025. Oh, I can't wait to make videos about these things. But before we do that, if this is your first time here, give us a like, give us a subscribe. We drop content on Mondays and Wednesdays, and on every first Tuesday of the month, we will have a live stream with the Microsoft Fabric product group throughout the year. You're not going to want to miss those. It's a wonderful chance for you to ask questions and for us to help review the new things that have come out every month. As a matter of fact, next Tuesday, we're going to be live with the product group. Okay, enough of this. Let's get to your top 10 list right now. Number 10. So first off, as we get into number 10, let's just recognize there are so many things that I want to see, so many things that you probably want to see, and I would love to hear what those things are. But for me, starting out at number 10, it's got to be OpenRowSet. We had OpenRowSet as a T-SQL syntax that we could use, and Azure Synapse Analytics dedicated pools, and also Azure Synapse Analytics serverless pools. Not only that, if I want to migrate my functionality and I want to be able to take some of the scripts that I'm utilizing and I want to migrate it from Azure Synapse Analytics, I really need this OpenRowSet functionality. And it's key to some of the preview features that I really loved about Azure Synapse Analytics. The capability for us to be able to right-click on files and storage and get a really quick view of what we were looking at. We can do that today in Fabric, but we have to do it with a Spark notebook and reading data into a data frame. And I'd like to be able to do that via the SQL endpoint. Okay, so now let's go to your top video. Over 1,000 of you tuned in to take a look at notebooks and how we pass parameters from notebooks to data pipelines. That was one of the key things that you were very, very interested in. As a matter of fact, parameters going from pipelines to data pipelines and data pipelines back to notebooks, that was something you were massively interested in. So we're going to talk about this subject again, but I've also got some fun stuff that we're going to put together in 2025 to help expand on these topics. I love the use cases. I love the comments that you have down and the questions that you have, because those help drive the videos. So keep those coming. Number 9. Next up, we have CI/CD support for Onelake shortcuts. I will be very honest with you. I've done a lot of blogging on CI/CD in the past, and I have hesitated up to this point in time in Microsoft Fabric because there's some key things that we've been missing that make that CI/CD journey completely possible. And we are very, very close to getting support for all of the items we need. But one of the key ones is shortcuts. Shortcuts are fundamental in the way that we get data from one engine to another engine, so that way we can leverage the power and the promise of Microsoft Fabric. So being able to have these shortcuts and not just have to have an API that we use to create them as part of a deployment from one environment to another, have them as an actual CI/CD object that we can migrate from environment to environment is very key to me. And I'm looking forward to exploring more CI/CD in 2025, and we're going to do a whole bunch of videos on that because we're going to really dive in this year because a lot of that core functionality is now there. Over to your number 9 video. So this was dynamically using parameters, pipelines. We combined a couple things and Spark to be able to import our data from Azure Synapse Analytics into a lakehouse. Now, I've got a lot of questions because we had a companion video to this that I took down earlier in the year because some of the functionality didn't work. And there's some functionality in this video, I'll be honest with you, that doesn't work anymore. So even though the descriptions in the video is and the link is down there, I'm going to tell you don't do this. But I will tell you that we are going to be redoing how we're going to migrate from Azure Synapse analytics into Microsoft Fabric. And that is a video series that we will be putting together this year. So stay tuned. Number 8. This one fixes a big pain for me, and it is the auto update of on-premise data gateways. This to me is a critical thing in managing security, patching, fixes, and making sure that my data gateways are actually up to date and everything is flowing the way that it should, especially as I'm bringing my on-prem data into Microsoft Fabric. It's ironic because when we get to your video, it was just that. It was using Azure Data Factory and the self-hosted integration runtime to be able to pull your on-premise SQL Server data into Microsoft Fabric. Now, there's a lot of different ways, and then we've got a couple different videos on this countdown specifically on bringing your on-prem data into Microsoft Fabric. Thousands of you turned up to watch this video that we created, and I'm so excited that I can see you guys using this and get your questions as you're migrating your data into Microsoft Fabric. Number 7. Okay, so this is the only number on the list that isn't on our current roadmap, and it's something that I desperately want to see. So I really want the capability to be able to turn off Microsoft Fabric functionality at the workspace level. And I know many of you do too. I have customers that only want to enable Power BI functionality at a workspace. I have customers that want to disable Power BI functionality at a workspace, but they want to allow data pipelines or they want to allow data warehouses. So there's so many things and customizations that people would like. We do a great job in our preview products of turning that on and off at the tenant level and setting security groups where we could specifically identify people that can use a feature. And I think many of you would like to see this at a workspace level. So again, no false hope because this isn't on the roadmap that I know of as of yet, and it's not on the public roadmap, but this is something I'd love to see. Speaking of something that you'd love to see, you love to see your number 7 video, which was ingesting API data using data pipelines. Thousands and thousands of you turned up to look at this solution, which clearly tells me that there was a need for this. I love the different comments, and this is again something that we're going to be diving into more. This specifically came from helping out a customer. And what are we doing? Tales from the field. These are tales from the field of how we actually help people. And this was one of those things. So I'm so glad that this could help so many of you. Number 6. Number 6 is taking ownership of Fabric items. This is a big one, and we've needed this for a while. Right now, there is a possibility that if someone creates something and then leaves your organization, you could have some orphan items, or if their identification is disabled, which is a standard security practice, once they leave an organization, they might not work or function like they need to. That's no bueno. So what do we need? We need to be able to take ownership of these items. What I would love to see in the future is a capability for us to assign these to a service principal or to a managed identity by default. But this is a first step to put the underlying functionality in place, which is a big step forward compared to what we currently have. Your number 6 video was one that was so much fun to figure out. And it was, how do I pass parameters from one notebook to another notebook? I had another customer that I was working with, and they had this specific issue where it was, I've got a parent notebook that is guiding me through several steps, and I'm executing this overall, but I want to modularize my code and I want to have some of this code in different notebooks. So that way it's separated and I don't have a massive notebook doing 100% of everything. How do I pass parameters from one notebook to another? Thousands of you showed up for this, and I can't thank you enough. Number 5. Since I started using AI skills, one of the first things I said was when we get the capability to use these outside of Microsoft Fabric, that's going to be the thing that really makes this feature worth it to so many people. And that's one of the functionalities that we are going to get, the capability to access an AI skill, that RAG pattern that we can create with just a couple checkboxes and validating that our data looks correct. And we're going to be able to access it with the AI Foundry capabilities that we have. I am so excited. When I saw this on the roadmap, it was something that just made me jump up and cheer, because this is going to be something we will make videos about, but I can see so many different ways that customers are going to be able to create RAG patterns and embed them and their customized use or in applications using AI Foundry later this year. So I'm very excited about this one. Now, the number 5 video is not your AI skills video, but it is one of my top favorite things that came out of 2024, and that is database mirroring. Thousands and thousands and thousands of you showed up to look at database mirroring. And to me, database mirroring is revolutionary because this is the easy button for migrations. The capability to be able to take your data and say, I want this data, import it, and then create a job behind the scenes to be able to do my incremental pipeline loading. This to me is just fantastic. And as we expand database mirroring, I'm so excited. It was already announced that there's going to be a private preview for SQL Server and for SQL Server 25 that this functionality is going to be built in and it's going to be even more optimized. I am so excited for this and I can't wait to make those videos later this year. Number 4. All right, we're into the top 4. And this is such a big one. I can't believe this isn't higher on my list, but that should just tell you how important the next top 3 are. And it is temp tables inside of Fabric Data Warehouse. It's crazy that we haven't had this up until this point in time. It's such a critical part of what we do in SQL Server and Azure SQL, Azure Synapse Analytics. And so having this functionality, I think, is really key for us to be able to have workloads that run really well, especially if you're looking at converting and migrating a lot of your code up into Microsoft Fabric. So I am ridiculously excited that in this quarter, we're going to get temp tables for the data warehouse capability. Now, interestingly enough, when we look at your top video for number 3, again, thousands and thousands and thousands of people turned up for this. This was the 9th video I ever created. We got to hop in the time machine and go back to 2023. And I did a beginner's video on inside the transaction log. And this is a talk, this actually came from a talk that I do often at SQL Saturdays where I cover so many different things. And I thought, well, this is a really key thing that when I used to work as a consultant, I would go and I would talk to DBAs about, and they always needed to know this information. I love it that this has turned out to be something that was so useful to all of you. And I mean, look, it's the old title card. I can't believe it's still going so strong. As a matter of fact, you've inspired me. This year, I'm going to be taking a look at the transaction log again. And I'm also going to take a look at some other beginner series that we may need for SQL Server. If there's something that you want, please sound off in the comments because I would love to produce some SQL Server content that you need. SQL is my first love after all. I mean, that's why on social media, I'm SQL Balls, last name Ball, first name, I love SQL. So SQL Ball. Anyway, you get the point. Number 3. Top 3 time. And coming in at number 3, it is something that I know I've wanted, and I think everybody else in the world has as well. And this is Data Factory's integration with Azure Key Vault. Now on the roadmap, it says we're going to get it this quarter. And I really hope that's the case because for a long time, we've used Key Vault to be able to protect our secrets. And if you're using Azure Data Factory, you've got this functionality in place. So it's really key if you're looking at migrating your workloads, we have to have this to be able to support it, but also it is the safe and secure way for you to be able to get your credentials for your connections and be able to access them. So this is massive and I'm so excited for this one to come. Speaking of another exciting thing. So in February on Valentine's Day, little did I know when I made this video, this was something you were going to fall in love with. And I'm talking about an introduction to VNET data gateways. When VNET data gateways were introduced, it gave us the capability to use that VNET data gateway to interact with items that might be behind a private endpoint. Makes sense to me in retrospect why this video would be so popular. Again, thousands and thousands and thousands showed up because you want to know how to be able to connect to those sources, and security is key and it's top of mind and is one of those things that we are always looking to use. As a matter of fact, I think security is going to cover the next one as well, but you're going to have to wait for that. Number 2, private link / endpoints at the workspace level. Right now we have this at the tenant level, but as you may be well aware, putting a tenant behind a private endpoint can come with some complications, especially when it comes to network capability and access. And especially if you've got users that are using their phones, mobile reports, or you're in an environment where you're using your bring your own device. Not only that, the capability for us to separate workloads at a workspace level can make it to where we can isolate some of the data components that require a private endpoint. Whereas some of the other things like a data set or like a Power BI report that we might need to have some type of cooperative sharing might be a little bit better for us not to have in a private endpoint. Or maybe we want to secure everything and we want to have individual private endpoints for our workspaces, and we're going to have VPN capabilities on those mobile devices. Any way you want to do it, it is amazing to have this capability at the workspace level. And I hope this is a sign of things to come where we're going to see more things where we get more granular capabilities at the workspace level as well. So this was massive. And speaking of, this video was actually our #1 video last year. And it is the #2 video this year. And thank you all for not only loving this the first time, but continuing to love it. But very early on, again, old title cards, we're going to the Wayback Machine to 2023. And it's how do you import on-prem SQL 2022 data into Microsoft Fabric? This time, it's using the first and original source that we had, which was Dataflow's Gen 2. And so if you've been using this, or if you've looked at this before, we've got a whole host of videos out there. And you know what? Maybe we're just going to make a big, long video of all the different ways that we can bring on-prem data into Microsoft Fabric at some point in time, just to put it all together as a collection so that you have it. Again, thank you to the thousands who showed up for this one. Really appreciate you. #1. You want the good stuff? Well, this is the good stuff. #1 on my list, and I am so excited for us to get this, is the capability to have parameterized connections in Data Factory. This is the one piece we are missing to be able to do a fully metadata-driven framework the same way that we can in Azure Data Factory. This is one of those things that is so popular and ubiquitous that people have been using this for a long, long time. People have blogged prolifically. My good friend and colleague at Microsoft, Gene Hayes, has an amazing blog out there. But the one thing we were missing for Microsoft Fabric was the capability to parameterize the connections at the high level, because that's done at the tenant level. And so again, this gives us a little bit of that more granular capability that we're really excited for. And just take a look at this screen. Remember, #7, that's the only one that I added that is not on the roadmap. But if you look at these other 9, pretty amazing stuff. And we're all supposed to get these within Q1 of 2025. So here's hoping, because I can't wait to make videos on this. And speaking of videos, your #1 video for this year was one that I did not expect. I made this video because a customer needed some help figuring out how to be able to pass a parameter from a pipeline to a notebook. And little did I know that there were a lot of people wondering how to do that. And it would spawn multiple different videos that you saw also in the countdown today. So I want to thank all of you for, first off, coming and checking this out, asking questions, making comments, and driving me to do more and more investigation and find this. This is your #1 video, and this is for you, and I can't thank you enough for this. Now, here we are. We're at the end of this, and there's one other thing I want. I want to hear from you. What content do you want to see in 2025? What is on your top 10 list for Microsoft Fabric? And it may be completely different than my top 10 list. I want to know this. #1, so that way I can understand what you need. But #2, I talk with the product group all the time, and I want to make sure they know what you need. Thank you so much for joining us today on Tales from the Field. As always, be good to one another out there. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Be a good day. Yeah. Set your affirmations, aspirations. I got shit to do, the aftermath of preparation.